Hi, everybody, it's Josh with Talk About Trek, and we are back again today to talk about what were Star Trek fans reading 50 years ago. They didn't have a lot of options back then. Of course, the series had been off the air for 10 years now. There was a extensive amount of fan fiction, that you can read, fanzines, things like that were going around. But as far as like published fiction goes, you had like the basically the episodes, the novelizations of the episodes, right? Novelizations of the animated series. But there was very little to no new fiction. I think at this point we had Spock Must Die, and that was published in 1970. So, interesting kind of how this book came about. Anyway, yeah, we're talking about, of course, Star Trek The New Voyages. Yes, published in 1976, 50 years ago, more specifically in March of 1976. This is the first real foray into, Star Trek fiction. For real, right? And it is taking basically, like I said, the stories that the fans came up with, and they were pulled together here by Sandra Marshak and Myrna Colbreth. And let me see, this was put together here. There's more information here as well. There's a ton of information in this, too, in the Voyages of the Imagination. So, what's great about these older books, too, is there is like an incredible amount of backstory and just other information you can get on it. So we do have a lot to talk about with the New Voyages. So, again, you're a Star Trek fan in 1976. Trek has been off the air, right? And you need something. You need some new voyages to entertain yourself. And of course, you've had all the fan fiction out there, but this is the first time that you've been able to go to the bookstore and pick up something, right? And they've collected 8 short stories here out of, I'm sure, thousands and thousands that were out there at the time, right? I'm probably not over exaggerating. And they were all written by women, too, which I thought was awesome. And it was almost like they are all kind of exploring the same theme, right? Which is just like kind of the relationship between Kirk and Spock, and just kind of like how strong that actually is. And, there's other stories that kind of delve into other things too, but it kind of has that main theme, of their friendship and kind of like Kirk's, also just his like love for the ship, right? And just, again, a wide variety of different tales. And what makes this unique, and I think is something that is strictly unique to this book, is the amount of introductions by the actual cast that we have here. So we have, they tried to get everyone. I think they had to cut the Chekhov story, but we do have introductions by William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, DeForest Kelley, James Doohan, Nichelle Nichols, George Takei, Majel Barrett, and of course, the foreword is written by Gene Roddenberry himself. So, an original Star Trek adventure. These are the new voyages of the Starship Enterprise, its continuing mission to seek out new life, new civilizations. William Shatner. Star Trek, The New Voyages. Here, collected in one history-making anthology, are 8 of the very first original Star Trek stories. Rejoin the crew of the Enterprise as they boldly journey where no man has gone before. This volume also includes a foreword by series creator Gene Roddenberry and thought-provoking introductions by Star Trek cast members, including William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy. And, of course, as we said, much, much more. The cover art here as well, we did have. We don't want to be remiss on that. And we can tell you the cover art is by... Edward John Jones, who went by the pseudonym. I mean, look how white. Oh, that's too bright. Okay, we gotta turn that off. But anyway, and S. Fantoni. And he did a lot of the... Well, not a lot, but he did some of the other work for Star Trek as well. Ah, there we go. Perfect. Okay. Now, on to the book itself. what do you have here? Again, you have your first. Not only is it your first Star Trek, real published fiction, but you've also got your first collection of Star Trek short stories, which I thought was kind of funny because when I was getting into this book initially, I didn't even kind of realize that. And it's funny to me because that is what I had been reading before, was Star Trek short stories. So we continue on with the short stories, with the TOS short stories, and again, a fine collection of them here. So we'll just kind of briefly go through them, and we won't go too crazy into depth, and maybe highlight just kind of a few of them. The first one is called Nivar, and it is written by Claire Gabriel, and this one has the introduction by Leonard Nimoy, and it's it's an interesting one. Spock, through the acts of the scientist, is split into two: the Vulcan Spock and the human Spock. So basically, the story kind of consists of him trying to hide that from Kirk and the rest of the crew, and then the fallout and kind of what happens there. And again, it goes into the friendship between Kirk and Spock, and that plays a big part in that, right? Oh, I really like the next one, and it's one of those just wonderful sci-fi ideas. I think that is just great. It's called Intersection Point. This one was written by Juanita Colson, and this was introduced by James Doohan. And the Enterprise runs into basically kind of like this gaseous anomaly, right? And then all of a sudden, their hull is breached, and they have no idea what's going on. And they have to kind of figure it out. And between Spock and Scotty, they're able to sort it out that they've actually hit like an intersection point between two dimensions. And they are basically crashed with another ship, which is in another dimension, And they kind of work through it, they figure that out. And again, it's just a very well done sci-fi story. And again, I'm going to say this about all of the writers here, and it's just the truth because all of the writers here are, of course, immense fans, because that's what drove them to write these stories, and they know the characters well. So when you're reading each of these short stories, you really do feel like you're kind of right there watching an episode of the original series, right? The next one is called The Enchanted Pool. It was written by Marcia Erickson, introduced by Nichelle Nichols. And in this one, basically there's like a problem down on this planet. Spock has to trying to like figure out, oh gosh, yes, this was a good twist, right? There was a crashed spacecraft. Spock is searching for it. He's failed in finding it. He's lost his ability to communicate with the ship, and he runs across this enchanted pool with this kind of crazy elf nymph lady, right? Who's like just kind of talking crazy stuff to him, saying things. She comes from the Silver Star, and she has a lightning bolt on her chest, and all these different things, and how she loves him, and she wants him to go back to his cave and break the spell and give her a kiss so she can escape this evil wizard. And this whole kind of fantastical story, and Spock's just like, what? And oh man, I don't even want to give it up. It's got such a fantastic twist. You should read it. The Enchanted Pool by Marcia Erickson, and I won't. Ooh, all right, next one. Moving on. Visit to a Weird Planet, Revisited. I love this because it almost reminded me of the title of Naomi Wildman's, what was it, her report that she was doing, The Weird Planet Displaced in Time, or whatever. If you know, then you know, right? But anyway, A Visit to a Weird Planet Revisited by Ruth Behrman, introduced by Majel Barrett Roddenberry. And this is a very, very interesting story, unlike anything I've ever read in Star Trek fiction, where the actors, William Shatner, DeForest Kelley, and Leonard Nimoy, get transported to the Enterprise, and kind of vice versa, right? And this is actually it's like a sequel to another fan fiction that came out, which is why it's called, Visit to a Weird Planet Revisited. But you get to see what, Shatner, Kelly, and Nimoy would do, in that actual situation, which is kind of a very funny story. The next one, The Face on the Barroom Floor by Eleanor Arnenson and Ruth Behrman again, with the introduction here by George Takei. Kirk goes on shore leave and gets himself into a bit of a situation, which is basically it's a very lighthearted, fun story. And the one thing that it left me wondering is what a neo samurai suit looks like. And I might have to do some research on this because uh, Sulu looks at one and he's kind of like, I don't think so. But then later on in the story, Kirk goes back and he buys it, he puts it on, and gets himself into all sorts of shenanigans after that. Uh, and in the end, of course, everything works out in the end. But just, kind of a fun little shore leave story, right? Oh, okay. Well, yes, the next one. This is actually a Bones and Spock story, The Hunting by Doris Beadham, with an introduction by the editors here, right? Editors, people that put it together, Sandra Marshak and Myrna Colbrath. And this is an interesting one where Spock has his own little shore leave, and he's going to do like a Vulcan ritual hunt, right? And he goes out there, and again, I don't want to give away too much on this one. It is a really good one. And again, man, this is 8 stories written by Star Trek fans who, at the time, were like, this was awesome. Why don't we have more? I'm going to have to write it myself, right? Like, this is exactly what it is, which is why it's just so good. So again, I won't give too much away on that one, but very good Bones Spock stuff. Again, this is very, very Spock heavy, right? Very Spock heavy, I would say, which is fine. The Wing Dreamers by Jennifer Guttridge. This one has an introduction by DeForest Kelley. And again, another shore leave story. And in this one, on shore leave, basically people start to be able to dream anything they want, and that's causing, of course, a lot of problems. The crew is not wanting to return to the ship, and it even goes as far to affect Kirk and Kirk and Bones. And again, I don't want to give the whole story away, but it's a Kirk, Bones, and Spock thing. Lots of interesting stuff here too, and I love how there's times when you don't know if what they're doing is the effect of the dreamers or if it is not, right? And the author does that very well too. And again, that was Jennifer Guttridge who did that one. Now, finally, the final story with an introduction by William Shatner, but written by who is affectionately known as Grandma Trek. I saw Shirley Mayuski, and I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, and I really should look up names before I attempt to pronounce them. But anyway, this is called Mind Shifter, and this is a very interesting story, and we have a little bit to talk about with this one too. But basically, Kirk is subjected to the Klingon Mind Shifter, and then lost to time, right? So you have kind of 2 parts of the story, one being Kirk with no memory, lost in time, dealing with that. The other, Spock and the crew of the Enterprise having to deal with Kirk being gone, but Spock not really dealing with it, not really believing it. Oh man, it is such a good story, and I was surprised to find that the story, as published, was heavily edited by the editors here, and the original author was actually not happy with how her vision was portrayed. Interesting, right? And it even went so far, and this is just, I read this, and I mean, I'm taking it to be the truth because I've read it on these different Star Trek sites, so I'm hoping that it is. But again, what she had originally written, it was kind of heavily cut, wasn't her vision, right? But later on, when they were doing the fan fiction show Star Trek Phase 2, which became Star Trek The New Voyages, James Cawley, I guess he got the original manuscript from Shirley, and they did, oh, there we went in the dark. We're back. They did this episode. So I didn't watch it yet, but I am going to sit down and watch that episode. And, that's one of the things that I have not done, but I need to get out and do, is there is so much of these. There's the Neutral Zone produced ones. There's just a whole bunch of these, right? The fan fiction, the original series ones, and it is fun to sit down and watch those. And I'm very excited to see how the story that they present, is different from the one shown here. And I'm just noticing now that this cover here that I'm showing you guys is different from this cover here. I kind of like that other cover, man. That's really cool. I'm going to have to look for that one. Anyway, that was Star Trek The New Voyages. Again, 8 short stories plus 1 sonnet from the Vulcan. Omicron Ceti 3 by Shirley Meach. And I guess I would be remiss if we did not go over this. This is a love poem from Spock to Layla Kalomi. We'll read it. I thought the memory of you was gone. I thought it buried underneath the years. And now it rises bright as Vulcan dawn. And I remember you in earth and tears. Your tears were falling like the rains of earth. You were the storms and roses of earth's spring. You could not know that almost from my birth, the right of Vulcan bound me to T'Pring. I could not break those ties, I had no choice. Returned to space, left you and earth behind. But still I heard the echo of your voice, found rain and wind and roses in my mind. You told me that you loved me, and you cried. I said I had no feelings, and I lied. Pretty cool, right? That's a fun way to end this little compilation here. Now, this has actually made me very interested in reading Star Trek Lives, which is kind of the reason that this book even came about. Star Trek Lives is kind of the nonfiction book that goes over the whole fandom, after the show kind of went off the air, the conventions, everything that kind of brought it back, right? So, fairly amazing. So, again, what were Star Trek fans reading 50 years ago? They were reading The New Voyages. They were reading fanzines, too. They were reading a lot of fanzines. And, gosh, I mean, I would have been, right? And, it's just because there's such an enormous amount of Star Trek fiction for me to read that I don't have to do that now. But if I didn't have this, I would still seek out those new stories and those new voyages, because that's, as a fan, you don't ever want the story to end. You want that to continue, and that's what they did here. And that birthed a whole big thing that I've got over here. Right? Look at this. Look. Yeah, you know it. Look at them all. Look at them all. It's amazing. And it all started here with this, right? So that's fantastic. And it's been a fun time reading, and always, again, a fun time talking about it as well. Thanks for hanging out and listening. We will be back with Book Trek soon, and we'll be talking about that shortly. But as always, my friends, live long and prosper, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good night.